Good morning on today's WOTWIP with coffee. And I do have coffee. Let me get a drink. I today am working on that 3-wedge shawl. And I was thinking about adding a couple of rows of lace, but I think I'm going to add some granny rows to this and just going to try it out to see how it works. If you have seen the video where I talked about changing up, where I teach you how to do the initial wedge, many times you have to work, and you sometimes will have to fudge as you come along. So I'm just going to play it by ear and see how it goes, and see what works, what doesn't work with this one. I do plan on showing you the following week how to do one that is just done with granny squares, with the granny stitch. It does come out a little differently. Instead of coming out like a half hexagon, it comes out as more of a square, I guess you would call it, shawl. It does work out fine. It just has a different look to it, but you still get that nice feature. The only difference is the way that you will do that, and we'll get into that next week when I do show you how to create that shawl. I have done these in the past, haven't done them in a long time, so this is kind of fun for me to revisit them and to play with them and see how they work out. And the one thing that I stress in that video is, once you learn basic crochet, where the increases are for basic crochet shawls, you can do any stitch in those shawls, and sometimes you just have to be creative with the way that you are, playing with those shawls. So that's kind of fun in itself to do. I hope that all of y'all are having a good week this week. Mine has been fairly decent. Although I did get the real estate tax bill, and I've been waiting for it last month, and of course it showed up. And of course it has a payment date of March the 1st. Yeah, got that yesterday, so at least they got it to me in the month of March, right? So I don't have to pay a late fee. Sometimes I wonder if they do that on purpose, You never know. But yeah, that's the only bad part of my week that I've had. At our local church, we do a Easter egg hunt type thing, where they present the gospel and they hand out candy. So last night we were filling the eggs for the Easter hunt with the candy. So that's been a lot of fun, getting together with other people. And last year and some of the previous years, they had the plastic eggs. They put the candy in the plastic eggs. And in the past years, when they've had those, they've reused the plastic eggs, and you had to figure out which egg went to which, that kind of thing. Well, they had said this year that they have all new eggs, plastic eggs, so you don't have to fight to see which egg goes with what other end of the egg. I did find that rather funny, and it's just interesting the way that it works out. And of course, this is the first year that I have actually filled Easter eggs. I haven't been with this church that long, so yeah, it's been kind of fun getting to know all the different people and that kind of stuff, and joining in on the different activities. One way to get to know people in your church area is to participate in the activities, serve in the church, I do find that's an important part of it. I've always felt like that's an important part of going to church, is serving it, because you're serving the Lord. So, yeah, having fun doing that. So what are you guys working on today? Are you working on something special, or getting Easter projects all finished up? I had in my mind that I was going to do from Joe's Web, her leggy bunny. I don't know if I'm going to get to that. I'm hoping to then this next week before Easter, because I wanted to get a bunny done. As you know, I am trying to stretch my wings with amigurumi. That is something that is very new to me. Well, it's not new to me. I've done it before, but I'm not very good at it. So I would like to continue to do a little bit more of that. So it becomes a little more secondhand nature, so they don't look as derpy. At least that's what I'm hoping is. The more practice, the less derpy they look. The other morning I came across a video on Facebook that was put out by Jackie Lindsay. And I found it rather interesting because it talked about this woman who had a friend who was a teacher, and in the school system where she was a teacher was checking backpacks, which is kind of sad that we have to do that nowadays, to check backpacks. But they were checking backpacks as kids came in, and a couple of the kids had small containers of nutmeg. And when the teacher had asked what they were for, they said, oh, they're for, I guess, home ec or cooking class or whatever class it was. And so she was, okay, no big deal. So then she asked the cooking teacher what they were making that they needed so much nutmeg for. And apparently this cooking teacher looked at her and she said, we're not making anything with nutmeg. I don't know what you're talking about. And the school resource officer overheard the conversation and asked if she remembered which of the kids had it, which she did, and they were all called forward, and they were all basically expelled from school for having the nutmeg. But the video ended there. It didn't talk about why they were expelled and what that was for. And I think this is important for us to know, not only as parents, grandparents, but whatever. On TikTok, there was a woman who'd put out a challenge for a nutmeg challenge. And the nutmeg is either inhaled or smoked. And when it is done that way, it becomes a hallucinogenic. Now, so that's where that came from. So beware, if your kids, grandkids are hoarding nutmeg, you might have a clue as to why they are. Now, in the past, in days of old, many times nutmeg was used to cover up, nutmeg and honey, those kind of things were used to cover up bad meat, bad foods, or to add taste, flavor to foods. But if you ingested too much, what happens is, not only do you hallucinate, cats are going at it big time today, but not only do you hallucinate, but it slows your heart rate, slows your respirations, can cause vomiting, all kinds of abdominal pain, all kinds of things. But it can cause you to look like you are dead. Your respirations, your heartbeat is so slow that people often in that time who had ingested overdoses of nutmeg were thought to be dead. And then they were buried, because the idea was to bury you within 24 hours of death, because the body breaks down and decomposes and all kinds of things. And of course, they weren't embalming back then. So people would be buried alive, basically. And then they would try to dig their way back out of the coffin. So then it became a tradition. So many of you may see in older cemeteries where at the graveside there is a pole or something where a bell was attached. And that was meant so that if the person woke up from their stupor or whatever, was buried alive, could ring the bell, and then the grave diggers would dig them up. So, there's a twofold warning here. Keep in mind it can cause you to look like you're dead. Second, be aware if your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren are hoarding nutmeg. It could be a sign that they are using this as a hallucinogenic drug. I'm telling you, kids will try anything. I mean, you know, the whole thing with the cough medicines, the reason many of the medicines we have to go are behind the counter now were because of not only drug dealers who would take it and try to make methamphetamines, but also because kids were using it to get high. And we've seen these different fads where kids were using the cold medicines mixed with different things to create a high. So yeah, you have to be aware of these things, folks. And that is scary to think that we have to be so aware of what's going on, different things that seem to be no big deal. You know, who would think anyone would even think to use nutmeg in that manner? But they are. Well, that worked out nicely on my row, getting in that granny stitch. So, that's kind of fun. We'll see how a couple of rows go. Don't look at me like that, Cat. I know you guys are awful into tearing up things this morning. Little Miss Innocent Izzy, looks at me with those little eyes like, "What, Mom? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm an innocent kitten." Right. Innocent. I have seen a tag that has been going around, and quite interestingly enough, I found this tag when I was looking for new channels to shout out. So I will be doing that tag a little bit later, even though I was not tagged in it, at least not that I know of. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, a little different tag. I am including a lot of different channels in my shout outs now, besides just crochet and knit. One of the biggest things that I'm finding is with food prices so high and so many people having to turn to blessing boxes or pantries, those kind of things for food, that I'm finding that some of the budget meals are coming in handy. Now, I have always kind of followed budget meals anyway, because quite frankly, with going to the church that I go to, quite often there are potlucks. So that helps with the potluck to further it and, you know, to be able to bring in for a potluck, which normally I wouldn't bring in such a big thing, big food, that kind of thing. But because there's just one of me, you know, I don't normally make that big a serving. Although sometimes I do make, you know, a serving size of 4, freeze 2, and then I'll have one as a leftover for the next day. But, yeah, things are getting bad, aren't they? And of course, it's an election year. It seems like election year. Nobody buys anything because they're worried about what's going to happen to the economy and everything else. And I had someone, and I'll kind of address this here. Let me get a drink. I had someone who sent me an email asking why I don't do yarn hauls anymore. When I do a yarn haul, usually it's very small, or it's something that I really want because, I found that it was beautiful, that kind of thing. I found that many times when I saw people doing other yarn hauls or I saw big deals on these yarns, I would go and purchase a lot of yarn. You guys have seen my stash, I think. Maybe I should add to the end of this a video of my stash. But I had decided to do the Scorched Earth challenge again for myself to get some of these yarns down, because quite frankly, I have a buttload of yarn. I mean, there's no other way to say it. And yeah, I could do giveaways, but I found that giveaways many times are stressful. Trying to remember it, trying to remember if I have enough money to send it away. Do I want to make it just US only? Which, that in itself, then I feel bad. So I've pretty much decided that I'm not going to do as many giveaways as before. And if I do a giveaway, most likely it's going to be for one of my bags. Maybe I'll include a couple of skeins of yarn in that bag. But for the most part, I'm no longer going to be doing a lot of yarn giveaways because of that. Because of the cost of shipping, extremely high. Money's just not going as far as it used to. So, you see that. We see that always. And also, I had comments from people about, and this happens to all of us that have YouTube channels that include yarn. We get requests from people to send them yarn because they don't have yarn. And while I would love to be able to send everyone yarn, I can't do that. Although I do give yarn out to folks that are near me when they express that they are, want to do something and they don't have the yarn, don't have the funds. But normally that's people that I know close by, close to me. So, and then the other thing I suggest is for them to check out thrift stores. I'd gone to Walmart, and one of the ladies there that's a greeter at the store, she has been with me in Prayer Shawl for years and years and years. Although her work schedule doesn't allow her to come to Prayer Shawl that often, she does still donate yarn, those kind of things. So she was gathering up, I think, the rest of the yarn in her house because she's not doing any knitting, crocheting anymore. She's just doing other things. So she was going to bring it to Prayer Shawl. So we were talking about that. And she told me, she said she had been over to the thrift store that morning before she came to work, because she likes to go thrifting. A lot of those are thrifting for clothes, which is a good thing. Keep it out of the landfill, right? She said they have a whole bunch of Red Heart yarns, all kinds of yarns over there. She said, I don't know what the cost is, but I'm sure it's less than what it is here getting it brand new. Which sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So if I do purchase yarns, lots of times it is from someplace like Scraps and Skeins, because it keeps it out of the landfill. And I don't mind using old yarns. like I said, I have a ton of yarn. So I am trying to do, like I said, this scorched earth thing to get my stash down because I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by it, to be honest. You know, I teased it's great insulation. I probably have enough yarn to keep myself busy for at least a good 10, 15 years. So, who knows? But yeah, and that's the other thing. You know, when I'm watching some of these yarn hauls, or when like Creative Grandma or Teresa out of My Crochet Obsession, when she goes looking at the yarn stores, you know, like even just going to Michael's, 16 ounces are going for $12.99. That's a lot of money, folks. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm not all that willing to spend that much on 16 ounces of yarn. So, but it is something I love to do, and yeah, eventually I know I'll have to pay those prices. That doesn't mean we don't need to look for a good bargain, does it? So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Trying to get those things done. Trying to work on getting those stacks of yarn whittled down. So, maybe I will take you through a yarn tour at the end of this video, add it on. That way you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm almost ashamed having this much yarn. But I came by it honestly. Paid for it. And by golly, I'm going to use it. I'm going to get it out of my hair eventually. And of course, I have a friend who was telling me they thought that crocheting, knitting would be more stressful than it is. And I told him, I said, you don't understand. Crocheting and knitting for me is relaxing. It calms me. It soothes me when I am troubled or anxious about something. How did I get that all messed up? You know, plus, you know, I tease, it's an apocalyptic, what is that? How do you say that word? Apocalyptic skill. So yeah, there we go. Got you all straightened out. So it is a skill set. I am glad to see that we have a younger generation that is coming up and doing crochet and knitting. I find that good. For a while there, it looked like crochet was going to go by the wayside because a lot of people didn't crochet. But now I'm seeing where more people are picking it up and learning it. Young people are, of course, young people nowadays. You know, a lot of them are into this craft fairs and selling their wares. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, we all have our thing. So it's kind of nice to see. Got 2 rows of the granny done. I'm going to try a couple of rows of granny on this. But I think I'm going to end that in here. And I will go to a video of my yarn stash. And I will put that up there. Tack that on in the end, and maybe a cat video. Who knows? But I'll see you guys again next week. Hope you enjoy the tutorials. You know, I'm not very good at tutorials, but I'm willing to put myself out there. It's a learning process, and eventually I'll remember to stay in frame. But yeah, that's it for today, everybody. Remember to have a blessed day and be kind to one another. Be a little kinder to yourself. And I'll see you again soon. Bye. Now I know the lighting isn't good here. There are several totes that have yarn in them. There's that tote has yarn, the green one, and then there's a smaller tote up above it. The tote underneath has yarn. This one I don't believe has yarn. I think it has stuffing. Yeah, it has polyfill. The dark blue one down below has polyfill. I haven't been in here in a while to clean, so ignore the mess. And there are all my whips that I need to start working on. Quite a few of them. And some more in this. Different various yarns. My Addie. And then of course there is yarn, 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 yarn. So there's a lot of yarn for me to use in here. Let me move on to the next room. Now this is the little room that I call the office, where I do a lot of other stuff. But I have the 2 totes there, and I have 3 totes on the very bottom that have yarn in them. Some of the other things are just cords and things that I use. And then some of those are, in those other boxes, are different things that I use to put together for OCC, Operation Christmas Child. And here in the spare bedroom, you can see where my kittens have been helping me with cleaning up. Yeah, they like playing in the yarn. But I have this one wall with these that are full of yarn. Not only that, but then when we get over here, I have even more yarn. And then there is yarn over there as well. So that's not including the yarn that is in the living room. Now, I'm not going to show you because my living room is a mess right now. But I have several of those bins that I got from Dollar Tree that are filled with yarn. There are projects that I'm working on. I have one of those totes. They had them back in the summer at Walmart where you could put ice in them, those kind of things. I have 2 of those in the living room. I have 4 bags of yarn in the living room. So I have quite a bit of yarn all over the house. And then there in the hallway, on this small bookshelf, I do have just a couple of skeins of yarn, little pieces that I was working on, trying to put together projects, but just haven't quite finished them. So yeah, I've got a lot of yarn to go through this year in my, what I'm calling scorched earth. And of course I've got, I think 1 or 2 totes of that high-end yarn. Even though it says bulky on it, most of these are all wool or some kind of wool silk blend. A lot of them came from Knit Crate, and I just haven't used those up. So yeah, I need to start using those. But yeah, I need to go through and use this yarn. So that is part of my scorched earth. Hope you enjoyed this little video. Yeah, I see you thinking about jumping. Women's weaving in and out of my feet.